The massive doors to the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a hiss that seemed to echo through eternity itself. Ambassador David Torres stepped into the vast crystalline hall, his boots clicking against floors that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations older than Earth's recorded history. Above him, the chamber stretched upward into darkness so profound it seemed to swallow light itself, while around him, the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations watched his every move with eyes that held the wisdom of millennia. The chamber was beyond anything human imagination had conceived. Floating platforms arranged in impossible spirals housed delegates from worlds spanning thousands of light years. Each representative was a testament to evolution's creativity. The towering Vexhi with their crystalline exoskeletons that refracted starlight into prismatic displays. The flowing Nexari whose bodies seemed to be made of living liquid metal. And the ancient Korath whose stone-like forms had endured since before Earth's sun had learned to burn. At the chamber's heart, suspended in a sphere of pure energy, sat the Grand Arbiter Velnox, a being so old that his species had forgotten its own name. His voice, when it came, resonated through dimensions humanity was only beginning to understand. "The human delegation will present their case," Velnox announced, his words carrying the weight of cosmic authority. "The Galactic Council will determine whether your species merits inclusion in our ancient compact." David stood alone at the center of the chamber, feeling the focused attention of beings who had mastered space travel when humanity was still discovering fire. The weight of 300 billion human lives rested on his shoulders. Earth had achieved faster-than-light travel only 3 years ago, stumbling into a galaxy already carved up by civilizations that measured their histories in geological epochs. What humanity lacked in age, they had compensated for with innovation. Their first starship had been a revolutionary design that combined theoretical physics with engineering solutions no other species had attempted. It worked barely for exactly one journey before burning out completely, but it had worked, and that was enough to catch the galaxy's attention. "Honored delegates," David began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's bioacoustic systems. "I come before you not just as Earth's representative, but as an advocate for what our species can contribute to your great civilization." Counselor Drexnall of the Hegemony Worlds rose from his platform, his forearms gesturing in dismissal. "Your species has existed for barely a cosmic moment. You have waged constant warfare, nearly destroyed your own world multiple times, and now seek to spread your chaos to the stars. What possible contribution could you offer to civilizations that have maintained peace for millions of years?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. David had prepared for this moment, studying every aspect of galactic law, diplomacy, and custom, but standing here, surrounded by beings whose accomplishments dwarfed humanity's greatest achievements, he realized that preparation alone would not be enough. Counselor Drexnall raises valid concerns, David acknowledged. "Humanity is young, volatile, and prone to conflict. But perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs." A ripple of surprise moved through the assembled delegates. The Nexari representative, Ilthara, leaned forward with interest. "Explain this reasoning, young ambassador." David activated a holographic display showing Earth's technological development timeline. "In the past century, my species has gone from primitive flight to interstellar travel. We've achieved in decades what other civilizations accomplished over millennia. This acceleration came not despite our challenges, but because of them." The display shifted, showing human innovations. Fusion reactors born from weapons research, medical breakthroughs developed in wartime, space technologies created under the pressure of competition and survival. Every major leap in human advancement came from facing impossible problems with insufficient resources and limited time. David continued, "We learned to innovate not through careful methodical study, but through creative leaps born of necessity." Counselor Thexmore, whose ancient Corvani civilization had achieved technological stability eons ago, spoke with curiosity in his voice. "You present chaos as an advantage. How do you reconcile this with the need for galactic stability?" "Stability and stagnation are not the same thing," David replied. "Your civilizations have achieved remarkable peace and order, but at what cost? When was the last time any of your worlds made a truly revolutionary discovery? When did any of your species last face a challenge that forced them to fundamentally reimagine their approach to existence?" The chamber fell silent. The question struck at something the assembled delegates rarely discussed openly, the gradual slowing of progress that came with perfected systems. You've created a galaxy where change happens at a pace measured in geological time. David pressed on. Your trade routes haven't shifted in millennia. Your technologies advance through incremental improvements rather than breakthrough innovations. Your diplomatic protocols haven't evolved since before my sun began burning. Arbiter Velnox's ancient voice rumbled through the chamber. And you believe humanity can alter this? I believe humanity can offer something you've lost, David said. The ability to see problems from entirely new perspectives. To ask questions that seem obvious once posed but never occurred to minds thinking within established patterns. He gestured to his holographic display again, showing the design of humanity's first FTL drive. This ship violated 17 fundamental principles of your engineering philosophy. It should have been impossible to build, dangerous to operate, and certain to fail. Instead, it opened the stars to a species that most of your civilizations would have dismissed as primitively violent. Counselor Drexnall's stance remained skeptical. One successful innovation does not justify the risk of introducing chaos to galactic civilization. Then perhaps, David said quietly, we should discuss what's really at stake here. The chamber's lighting dimmed as his display shifted to show sensor readings from the galaxy's outer rim. The data painted a disturbing picture. Star systems going silent, deep space monitoring stations losing contact, and gravitational anomalies that suggested something vast moving between the galaxies. 3 months ago, your long-range sensors detected the first signs of what my people call the convergence, David announced. Entities from outside our galaxy, approaching with technologies that make your most advanced ships look like primitive vessels. The assembled delegates stirred with alarm. This information was classified at the highest levels of galactic government. How could this young species have detected what their own scientists were only beginning to understand? The approaching entities don't negotiate, David continued. They don't conquer. They simply arrive and begin implementing what they consider corrections to galactic development. Civilizations that have achieved what they view as excessive stability are edited, removed from existence as if they had never been. Arbiter Velnox leaned forward, his ancient mind processing implications that chilled even his cosmic perspective. You claim knowledge of these entities. How? David smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Because humanity has encountered their kind before. Not these specific entities, but others like them. We call them regulators, system balancers, cosmic maintenance protocols. They appear throughout human mythology under different names, but the pattern is always the same. They arrive to correct what they perceive as errors in development. And how, asked Counselor Ilthara, did your species survive such encounters? By being too chaotic to register as a proper civilization, David replied. Our unpredictable development, our tendency toward creative destruction, our ability to make impossible technologies work through sheer determination. All the things that concern you about humanity are precisely what make us invisible to these cosmic regulators. The chamber buzzed with translated conversations as delegates processed this revelation. The very traits that made humanity seem unsuitable for galactic membership might be the key to survival against threats beyond their understanding. You're proposing an alliance based on protection, Counselor Thexmore observed. I'm proposing evolution, David corrected. The galaxy stands at a crossroads. You can maintain your perfect stability and face extinction when the convergence arrives, or you can embrace controlled chaos and learn to adapt faster than any cosmic regulator can process. He looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of representatives from worlds whose names were legends. The choice is yours, honored delegates, but choose quickly. Our long-range projections indicate the convergence will reach the galactic core within 18 months. The massive chamber fell into absolute silence as the assembled civilizations contemplated a future that suddenly looked far less certain than their carefully ordered past. In that silence, the sound of David Torres's steady breathing seemed to echo like a countdown timer marking the end of one galactic age and the beginning of another. Arbiter Velnox's voice, when it finally came, carried the weight of eons. The Council will deliberate. Ambassador Torres, you have presented us with possibilities we had not considered and threats we had not fully comprehended. This decision will shape not just your species F. The Galactic Council's deliberation chambers had never witnessed such intense debate. For 72 hours, representatives from civilizations spanning the galaxy argued over a decision that would normally take minutes. The ancient Nexari contingent spoke in measured tones about the dangers of unpredictability, while the younger Corinth delegation advocated for cautious integration. Through it all, the specter of the approaching convergence hung over every word like a storm cloud gathering on the horizon. Ambassador David Torres waited in the isolation suite assigned to visiting delegates, a crystalline cell that offered a panoramic view of the galactic core, but no communication with the outside universe. The suite's walls displayed real-time updates from across known space, trade convoys following routes unchanged for millennia, research stations pursuing investigations that had begun before Earth's continents had formed, and along the rim, the growing silence where monitoring posts had simply stopped reporting. The door chimed with the harmonic sequence that indicated an official summons. David straightened his formal diplomatic jacket, knowing that the next few minutes would determine not just humanity's fate, but potentially the survival of every civilization in the galaxy. The grand chamber had been reconfigured for the announcement. Gone were the floating platforms and spiraling arrangements. Instead, the 12 senior arbiters sat in a perfect circle at the chamber's heart, their forms illuminated by columns of pure starlight channeled from the galactic core itself. The symbolism was unmistakable. This decision would be final, absolute, and binding across all member worlds. Arbiter Velnox rose slowly, his ancient form seeming to accumulate gravity as he stood. Ambassador Torres of Earth approached the circle of judgment. David walked forward, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. Around him, holographic displays showed the faces of billions of beings across hundreds of worlds, all watching this moment that would reshape their understanding of galactic order. The Council has deliberated, Velnox announced, his voice carrying to every corner of known space. We have weighed your species' potential contributions against the risks of introducing chaos to our carefully maintained stability. We have considered your warnings about external threats against our own intelligence regarding cosmic phenomena. The pause stretched for an eternity. David felt the attention of entire civilizations focused on this single moment. The Galactic Council hereby votes to deny humanity membership in our compact, Velnox declared. Furthermore, the Sol system is designated a containment zone. No human vessel shall travel beyond the boundaries of your home system. Violation of this edict will result in immediate military intervention. The chamber erupted in a symphony of alien communications, harmonic resonances from the Vexhi, electromagnetic fluctuations from the energy-based Zephyrians, and subsonic rumbles from the deep core Malari. Some expressed satisfaction with the decision. Others voiced concern about the implications for the approaching threat, but all understood that an unprecedented moment in galactic history had just concluded. David Torres stood perfectly still at the center of the chaos, his expression unreadable. When the cacophony finally subsided, he spoke a single word. Understood. Then he smiled. That smile sent ripples of unease through the assembled arbiters. It was not the expression of a defeated diplomat or a species facing exile. It was the smile of someone who had just received exactly the answer they had been hoping for. If I may, honored arbiters, David said, his voice carrying a confidence that seemed oddly misplaced. I have one final communication to transmit to my people. Velnox, puzzled by the human's demeanor, granted permission with a gesture. David activated a small device on his wrist, speaking clearly into its bioacoustic pickup. Command Authority, this is Ambassador Torres. The Council has rendered their decision. Containment protocols are now in effect. Execute Revelation Protocol immediately. The transmission ended, and David deactivated the device with a casual gesture that somehow managed to convey both respect and subtle defiance. What? Demanded Counselor Drexenol, his forearms trembling with suspicion. Is Revelation Protocol? Simply put, David replied, it's humanity's response to being told we cannot leave our system. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's primary displays activated without authorization. The screen showed Earth's solar system, but something was wrong. The familiar blue-white dot of humanity's homeworld was now pulsing with geometric patterns of light, visible from deep space. Around it, the fabric of space itself seemed to be folding. Impossible, whispered Counselor Ilthera. Those energy signatures, they're off our measurement scales. The displays shifted to show monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, and what they revealed sent shockwaves through the assembled arbiters. Ancient artifacts on dead worlds were activating. Deep space phenomena that had been stable for millions of years were beginning to shift. Most disturbing of all, several research installations reported the spontaneous appearance of structures that their sensors insisted had always been there, despite being completely absent from previous surveys. "What are you doing to our galaxy?" Velnox demanded, his ancient composure finally cracking. "We're fulfilling your decision," David replied calmly. "You told us we cannot travel to the stars." "You were absolutely right. We cannot travel to the stars as they currently exist, so we're bringing the stars to us." The chamber's displays now showed Earth in detail, and what they revealed challenged every known principle of physics. The planet itself had become a kind of interface between dimensions, its surface covered in patterns that seemed to extend into spaces that didn't quite exist. Around it, fragments of distant star systems were beginning to materialize, not transported but somehow convinced that they belonged in Sol space. "You see," David continued, "humanity has a unique perspective on the relationship between space and time. Other species view the universe as a fixed framework within which they must operate. We view it as a collaborative project that's open to negotiation." Counselor Thexmore leaned forward, his ancient mind struggling to process the implications. "You're describing reality manipulation on a scale that should be impossible for any civilization, let alone one that achieved spaceflight 3 years ago." 3 years ago, we achieved your kind of spaceflight, David corrected, the technology that took us to the stars in metal ships powered by fusion reactions. "But we've been working on this kind of travel for much longer. We just never needed it before your containment order gave us proper motivation." The displays shifted again, showing a view of the galaxy that made several arbiters physically recoil. Threads of energy now connected Earth to every major star system, but these weren't communication channels or transportation networks. They were something far more fundamental. Reality bridges that allowed humanity to edit the basic parameters of existence itself. "The artifacts appearing on your worlds," David explained, "aren't alien technology. They're human constructions, placed retroactively into your history through consciousness-driven temporal revision. The phenomena you're detecting aren't threats to galactic stability. They're improvements to galactic efficiency." Arbiter Velnox struggled to maintain his cosmic perspective in the face of possibilities that challenged everything he understood about existence. "You're claiming that your species can alter the past?" "We're claiming that your understanding of causality is unnecessarily rigid," David replied. "Past, present, and future are more like suggestions than absolute laws, useful guidelines for civilizations that think linearly. But humanity has never been particularly good at thinking linearly." The chamber fell silent as the full scope of humanity's capabilities began to dawn on the assembled arbiters. They had contained a species that could rewrite the rules of containment itself. They had denied membership to beings who could simply create their own version of galactic civilization. "The convergence," Counselor Drexnall said suddenly, his earlier hostility replaced by growing comprehension. "You knew this would happen. You knew we would reject you." "We hoped you would," David admitted. "A positive decision would have forced us to work within your existing framework, to conform to your methods and limitations. Your rejection gave us something far more valuable: complete freedom to innovate." The displays now showed the outer rim of the galaxy, where the approaching convergence entities had begun to slow their advance. The cosmic regulators that had instilled such fear in the galactic civilizations were encountering something they had never seen before. A reality that refused to hold still long enough to be analyzed. "They can't process us," David explained. "Their correction protocols are designed for civilizations that follow predictable development patterns. But we're not developing anymore. We're actively redefining what development means." He gestured to the displays showing Earth's continuing transformation. "What you're witnessing is just the beginning. Every world that accepts our reality anchors will become part of a distributed consciousness network that can adapt faster than any cosmic regulator can react. We're not just protecting ourselves from the convergence. We're evolving past the need for protection entirely." The transformation began within hours of Ambassador Torres's revelation. Across the galaxy, ancient civilizations that had measured change in geological epochs found themselves facing decisions that would reshape reality itself. The Nexari were the first to respond, their flowing metal forms naturally adaptable to consciousness-bridging technologies. Within 6 hours of the Council session's conclusion, their primary research station had accepted humanity's reality anchor and reported results that defied every known principle of physics. Dr. Kethmara, the Nexari expedition leader, stood in what had been a standard orbital laboratory just hours before. Now the facility existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, its corridors extending into probability spaces that her species had only theorized about. Her liquid metal form rippled with sensory input that had no names in any galactic language. Status report to Council Command. She transmitted through channels that bypassed normal spacetime entirely. The human modifications are extraordinary. Our cognitive processing speed has increased by factors we cannot calculate. Our research capabilities now extend into theoretical frameworks that we previously considered impossible to explore. The transmission reached the Galactic Council chambers instantaneously, despite crossing thousands of light years. Similar reports flooded in from other early adopters. The crystalline Vexi had discovered that their naturally refractive bodies could now bend possibility itself, while the ancient Corvani found their geological patience transformed into an ability to perceive and manipulate cosmic-scale temporal flows, but it was the reports from the outer rim that truly captured the Council's attention. Counselor, Thexmore activated the chamber's primary displays, showing real-time sensor data from monitoring stations at the galaxy's edge. The approaching convergence entities had slowed their advance from systematic progression to confused drift. The cosmic regulators that had instilled such fear in galactic civilization were encountering something their eons of experience had never prepared them for. They're trying to analyze us, reported Commander Vextal from Deep Station Omega, his voice carrying through reality bridges that made faster-than-light communication seem primitive. But every time they attempt to categorize our civilization level, we change parameters faster than their assessment protocols can process. The displays shifted to show one of the convergence entities in detail. The being existed as living mathematics, its form shifting between geometric abstractions and physical manifestation. It had arrived expecting to find static civilizations ripe for correction, but instead encountered a galaxy in constant creative flux. In the Council chambers, Arbiter Velnox studied the readings with growing amazement. Their targeting systems are designed for civilizations that develop along predictable paths. But we're no longer developing. We're actively exploring the space of all possible developments. The humans call it phase space navigation, added Counselor Drexnall, his earlier hostility toward humanity replaced by grudging respect. Instead of following a single developmental trajectory, we're now investigating multiple evolutionary paths simultaneously. The implications were staggering. Where once the galaxy's civilizations had progressed through careful, methodical advancement, they were now discovering that existence itself was far more flexible than any of them had imagined. Worlds that had been barren for millions of years were spontaneously developing new forms of life. Technologies that shouldn't exist were becoming commonplace through sheer force of collective imagination. Most remarkably, new civilizations were emerging not through biological evolution but through pure conceptual development. Ambassador Torres appeared in the chamber via reality bridge, his image as solid and present as if he had physically traveled the impossible distance. Honored arbiters, I thought you might want an update on the broader situation. His words were accompanied by a galactic map that showed the transformation spreading outward from Earth like ripples in a cosmic pond. Each world that accepted humanity's reality, anchors became a node in an ever-expanding network of IU, consciousness and possibility. The convergence entities are beginning to understand what they're facing, Torres continued. 3 of them have stopped their correction attempts entirely and started observing our transformations instead. They're learning. This was perhaps the most surprising development of all. The cosmic regulators that had appeared as implacable forces of universal maintenance were proving capable of adaptation when confronted with something truly unprecedented. How is this possible? Asked Counselor Ilthara. These entities have operated according to fixed protocols for longer than our civilizations have existed. Because they're not actually malevolent, Torres explained. They're maintenance systems, designed to prevent the universe from falling into static equilibrium. For eons, They've encountered only civilizations that achieve stability through stagnation. We're showing them that stability and dynamism aren't mutually exclusive. The chamber's displays shifted to show communication attempts from the convergence entities themselves. The messages arrived as pure mathematical concepts, translated by human-enhanced consciousness networks into forms the assembled arbiters could comprehend. Query: civilization parameters exceed standard correction, protocol analysis. Observed development patterns suggest dynamic equilibrium rather than static stagnation request. Cooperation in universal maintenance paradigm revision. They're asking for our help, Torres said simply. The convergence isn't just a threat to be survived. It's an opportunity to evolve beyond the limitations that have constrained galactic civilization for millions of years. The assembled arbiters struggled to process the magnitude of what they were witnessing. In the span of days, their understanding of cosmic order had been completely overturned. The entities they had feared as harbingers of extinction were revealing themselves as potential partners in an exploration of existence itself. But what does this mean for our civilizations? Demanded Counselor Drexnell. We've spent eons building stable societies, careful hierarchies, regulated advancement. Are you suggesting we abandon everything we've achieved? I'm suggesting you evolve it, Torres replied. Your achievements aren't obstacles to overcome. They're foundations to build upon. The careful balance you've maintained, the diplomatic protocols you've developed, the peaceful coexistence you've achieved, these are exactly the tools needed to navigate the possibilities opening before us. The reality around them shifted subtly as he spoke, and suddenly the chamber existed in multiple probability states simultaneously. The arbiters could perceive versions of their conversation where different decisions led to vastly different outcomes, all coexisting in a framework that made choice itself more meaningful. This is what dynamic equilibrium looks like, Torres explained. Not the static balance of forces that prevents change, but the active exploration of possibility that makes growth and stability compatible. Counselor Velthara leaned forward, her serpentine form coiling with interest. The consciousness bridge networks you've established they preserve individual civilizations while enabling collective advancement? More than that, Torres replied. They allow each civilization to explore its unique potential without losing connection to the greater galactic community. The Nexari are discovering forms of research impossible for individual minds. The Vexi are learning to refract not just light but possibility itself. The Corvani are finding that their geological patience makes them natural architects of cosmic-scale projects. The displays around the chamber showed examples of each species' enhanced capabilities. Nexari research stations that existed in multiple dimensions, Vexi constructs that bent space-time through crystalline resonance, and Corvani engineering projects that spanned star systems while maintaining perfect ecological balance. And humanity? Asked Arbiter Velnux. What is your species' role in this new paradigm? Torres smiled with the quiet confidence that had become his trademark. We're the chaos agents, the ones who ask the questions that seem obvious once posed but never occurred to minds thinking within established patterns. We provide the creative disruption that prevents the network from settling into new forms of stagnation. The chamber fell silent as the assembled arbiters contemplated a future that seemed simultaneously terrifying and magnificent. Everything they had known about cosmic order was being rewritten, but instead of destruction, they were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented, a galaxy-spanning civilization that could grow without losing stability, explore without losing wisdom, and change without losing identity. The choice remains yours, Torres said quietly. The reality anchors we've offered aren't mandatory. Any civilization can choose to remain as they were, maintaining their traditional development patterns. But I should warn you, the universe has noticed what we're doing here, and not all of its attention is friendly. The transformation we're offering isn't just about surviving the immediate threat, Torres continued. It's about evolving into something capable of thriving in a universe far stranger and more. 6 months after first contact with the convergence entities, the galaxy had become unrecognizable. The ancient order of regulated advancement and careful diplomatic balance had given way to something unprecedented. A dynamic civilization that existed in multiple probability states simultaneously, constantly exploring new forms of existence while maintaining the essential characteristics that made each species unique. The transformation was most visible at the galactic core, where the original council chambers had evolved into something beyond architecture. The crystalline walls now extended into dimensions that mathematics was still learning to describe, and the assembled representatives no longer met in person but through consciousness. Interfaces that allowed direct sharing of concepts too. Complex for traditional language, Ambassador. Torres stood in the transformed chamber alongside entities that weeks before had been viewed as cosmic threats. The convergence beings had proven to be remarkably adaptable once they understood what they were encountering. Where once they had appeared as cold geometric abstractions, they now manifested as collaborative partners in the great work of universal exploration. The largest of these entities, which had adopted the designation Harmony for ease of communication, addressed the assembled consciousness network with concepts that arrived as pure understanding rather than words. Observation. Universal maintenance paradigms require fundamental. Revision explanation. Previous protocols assumed static. Equilibrium as optimal civilization state new understanding. Dynamic equilibrium enables growth without stagnation. The implications are staggering, reported Dr. Kethamara, whose Nexari research station had become the nexus point for much of the galactic transformation. We're not just changing how civilizations develop. We're changing the universe's understanding of what development means. Her words carried additional layers of meaning through the consciousness bridge network. Other participants could experience her discoveries directly. The realization that space and time were more collaborative than previously understood, that consciousness could serve as an active force in shaping reality, and that the universe itself might be far more intelligent than any individual civilization within it. Counselor Velnox, his ancient perspective now enhanced by humanity's gift for creative leaps, shared his own revelations. We've spent eons assuming that cosmic laws were limitations to work within. Humanity has shown us they're more like guidelines that can be negotiated, with proper understanding and sufficient creativity. The galactic map, displayed around them, showed the transformation, spreading beyond their home galaxy. Other spiral arms, distant elliptical formations, and even the vast intergalactic voids were beginning to show signs of change. The reality modifications that had begun on Earth were propagating outward at speeds that defied conventional physics. Carried by consciousness, bridges that treated distance as a suggestion rather than an absolute. But it was the readings from beyond the galactic cluster that truly captured everyone's attention. "We have a problem," announced Torres, his expression growing serious as new data streamed through the network, the universal maintenance system that the convergence entities represent. They're not the top of the hierarchy. The chamber's displays shifted to show regions of space so distant that light from them predated the formation of galaxies. Out there, in the deep structure of space-time itself, things were stirring that made the convergence look like local maintenance crews working on a small section of a vast, incomprehensible machine. Harmony's mathematical form pulsed with patterns that conveyed urgency and concern. Warning. Oversight protocols have detected unprecedented modifications to universal constants translation. Cosmic administrators are responding to reality revision activities assessment. Intervention probability approaching certainty. Cosmic administrators? Torres asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The entity that responded had no name in any language, existing as pure cosmic function rather than individual consciousness. It manifested in the chamber as a presence that made galaxies seem small, ancient beyond measure yet somehow timeless. Identity, universal oversight. Collective purpose, maintenance of fundamental. Reality parameters, concern, localized reality modifications. Threaten universal stability notification. Correction protocols will be implemented to restore baseline conditions. The assembled consciousness network recoiled at the implications. Where the convergence entities had been sent to correct individual civilizations, these new arrivals operated on a scale that encompassed entire universal regions. They weren't interested in editing specific societies out of existence. They were prepared to reset entire sectors of space-time to default parameters. "How long do we have?" asked Counselor Drexnell, his military experience automatically shifting to tactical planning. Timeline. Correction. Implementation commences in 4 standard galactic cycle scope, All reality modifications within local universal cluster will be reversed restoration. Baseline physics laws will be enforced result. Affected civilizations will revert to pre-modification development states. 4 cycles, Torres muttered, his mind racing through possibilities. That's barely enough time to establish stable consciousness bridges across the local cluster, let alone develop defenses against entities that operate on universal scales. But even as the threat revealed itself, the hybrid intelligence network that now connected hundreds of civilizations began generating solutions that no individual species could have conceived. The Nexari contributed their mastery of multidimensional research. The Vexai offered their ability to refract possibility itself, and the ancient Corvani provided the geological patience necessary for cosmic-scale projects. Humanity's contribution was characteristically unconventional. "We don't fight them," Torres announced, his statement causing ripples of confusion through the network. "We convince them that they're wrong about what universal stability actually requires." Dr. Kethamara's liquid metal form shimmered with skepticism. "These entities have maintained cosmic order for periods longer than universal evolution itself. What could we possibly teach them about stability?" "The same thing we taught the Convergence," Torres replied. "That stability and stagnation aren't the same thing. That growth and order can coexist. That the universe might be more interesting than their maintenance protocols assume." He gestured to the displays showing their transformed galaxy. "Look at what we've accomplished. Every world that joined the consciousness network has maintained its essential character while gaining capabilities they never imagined. The Nexari are still Nexari, just enhanced. The Vexai remain crystalline beings, but now they can refract concepts as well as light. We've proven that evolution doesn't require abandoning identity." Harmony's mathematical presence pulsed with something that might have been hope. "Hypothesis, universal administrators. Operate under assumption that modification equals destabilization counterargument. Observed reality demonstrates modification can enhance stability strategy. Present evidence of successful reality revision without universal degradation." "Exactly," Torres agreed, "but we need to do more than present evidence. We need to demonstrate that our modifications actually improve universal stability, rather than threatening it." The consciousness network began coordinating efforts across impossible distances. Reality anchors that had been establishing local modifications started linking together into larger patterns. Individual civilizations that had been exploring their enhanced capabilities began focusing on projects that would prove beneficial to universal maintenance itself. The Corvani initiated engineering, projects that would stabilize stellar formation in chaotic regions. The Nexari developed research protocols that could predict and prevent paradox formations in modified spacetime. The Vexai created crystalline networks that could detect and correct potential reality inconsistencies before they became problematic. And humanity, characteristically, began the most ambitious project of all, a direct interface with the universal oversight protocols themselves. "We're going to teach the universe to think differently about change," Torres explained to the assembled network. "Not through force or deception, but by demonstrating that creativity and stability can be partners rather than enemies." The project required resources and coordination on a scale that dwarfed anything previously attempted. Consciousness bridges spanning galactic clusters, reality modification networks that could adjust fundamental constants in real time, and communication protocols capable of interfacing with intelligences that existed as living cosmic functions. But perhaps most importantly, it required something that only humanity seemed capable of providing: the absolute confidence that impossible problems always had solutions, even when those solutions required redefining what possible meant. 4 cycles to save not just our galaxy, not just our universal cluster, but the concept of growth itself, Torres mused as the great work began. "I've seen humanity accomplish stranger things with less time and fewer resources." The countdown to universal intervention had begun, but so had the greatest collaboration in the history of existence. The galaxy that had once The moment of universal judgment arrived not with fanfare, but with a subtle shift in the fundamental constants of reality itself. Across the local cluster, civilizations that had spent months preparing for this confrontation felt the approaching presence of cosmic administrators as a pressure that existed beyond physical sensation. Space-time itself seemed to hold its breath as entities older than galaxies prepared to restore what they considered proper order to a region that had become dangerously chaotic. Ambassador Torres stood at the center of the transformed council chambers, now evolved into a nexus point that connected not just hundreds of worlds but multiple universal frameworks. Around him, the consciousness network that had become the new form of galactic civilization hummed with activity as every enhanced species contributed their unique capabilities to humanity's most audacious project yet. The Universal Oversight Collective materialized in a way that challenged perception itself. They existed as living laws of physics, their presence causing reality to crystallize into forms that had remained unchanged since the universe first learned to exist. Where they appeared, the creative modifications that had transformed the galaxy began to revert to baseline parameters. Announcement: Reality restoration protocols now active. Justification: Unauthorized modifications to universal constants threaten cosmic stability. Timeline: Complete restoration to baseline conditions within one standard cyclic assistance will be overcome through application of fundamental force corrections. The consciousness network recoiled as the cosmic administrators began their work. Reality anchors that had taken months to establish started dissolving. Enhanced civilizations felt their expanded capabilities beginning to fade. The dynamic equilibrium that had allowed growth without stagnation was being systematically dismantled by beings who viewed any deviation from original parameters as dangerous. Corruption. But Torres had prepared for this moment. The interface protocols that humanity had developed over the past months activated, creating a communication bridge between the cosmic administrators and the hybrid intelligence that now represented hundreds of civilizations working in perfect coordination. Before you continue, Torres said, his words carrying through dimensions the administrators had never expected consciousness to access. We request the opportunity to present evidence regarding the stability implications of our modifications. The Universal Oversight Collective paused, their cosmic functions momentarily interrupted by something unprecedented: a localized intelligence that could communicate directly with their operational protocols. Query: Communication method exceeds standard parameters for evolved. Consciousness analysis: Interface capabilities suggest fundamental misunderstanding of modification. Scope: Curiosity. Explain communication mechanism. Gladly, Torres replied. And suddenly the cosmic administrators found themselves experiencing something they had never encountered in their eons of existence: direct sensory input from the consciousness of evolved beings. Through the interface, they experienced what the transformed galaxy had become: not chaos masquerading as order, but a new form of stability that grew stronger through creative adaptation. They felt the careful balance that allowed the Nexari to explore impossible research without losing their essential liquid metal nature. They observed how the Vexi had learned to refract possibility while maintaining their crystalline identity. They witnessed the Corvani's cosmic-scale engineering projects that actually enhanced universal stability rather than threatening it. Most importantly, they experienced humanity's gift: the ability to see problems from perspectives that seemed obvious once shared, but had never occurred to minds thinking within established patterns. Surprise. Modifications appear to enhance, rather than degrade universal maintenance. Confusion. Observed stability parameters exceed baseline requirements. Scurry. How is dynamic equilibrium compatible with cosmic order? Because, Torres explained, sharing concepts directly through the interface. Order and growth aren't opposite forces. They're complementary aspects of a healthy universe. Your baseline parameters maintain stability by preventing change, but change itself can be a stabilizing force when properly directed. The consciousness network began demonstrating this principle on a cosmic scale. The reality modifications that had seemed like dangerous chaos revealed themselves as sophisticated maintenance protocols that could adapt to unexpected conditions. Where the administrator's static order required constant intervention to maintain baseline conditions, the dynamic equilibrium the galaxy had achieved was self-correcting and self-improving. Dr. Kethamara contributed her Nexari perspective through the interface, showing how multidimensional research capabilities had led to discoveries that actually solved long-standing universal maintenance problems. The Vexi demonstrated how their enhanced probability manipulation could prevent paradox formations before they occurred. The Corvani shared engineering solutions for stellar stability issues that had plagued cosmic administrators for eons. But it was Harmony and the other convergence entities that provided the most compelling evidence. As localized maintenance systems, they had operated within the administrator's protocols for millions of years, always working to correct civilizations that achieved dangerous stagnation. Now they testified that the galaxy's transformation had eliminated the need for such corrections entirely. Testimony: modified civilizations no longer require maintenance intervention evidence. Dynamic equilibrium prevents stagnation without inducing chaos recommendation. Reality modifications enhance rather than compromise universal stability. The cosmic administrators paused in their restoration protocols, their ancient programming encountering a situation that had no precedent in their vast experience. They had been designed to maintain universal order by preventing change, but they were being shown that change itself could be a tool for maintaining order. Torres pressed the advantage, sharing humanity's most fundamental insight through the consciousness interface. The universe is vast and strange and full of possibilities that static maintenance protocols can't anticipate. But those possibilities aren't threats to stability. They're resources for achieving stability in ways that rigid systems can't match. The interface carried additional meaning. Examples of how humanity's chaotic creativity had repeatedly solved problems that methodical approaches had failed to address. The development of faster-than-light travel through unconventional physics. The resolution of resource conflicts through technological innovations that changed the terms of scarcity itself. The transformation of potential enemies into allies by redefining what cooperation could mean. Analysis: consciousness-driven adaptation, superior to protocol-based maintenance realization. Static order represents suboptimal approach to universal stability. Decision: protocol revision required. But even as the cosmic administrators began to understand, new readings from their deep sensors revealed complications that threatened the entire negotiation. Warning: external universal framework detecting anomalous activity alert. Higher order oversight protocols responding to reality. Modifications threat. Intervention from entities beyond local universal administration. Torres felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. If the cosmic administrators represented the universe's maintenance system, what did higher order oversight mean? The answer came in the form of presences that made the administrators seem local and limited. These entities existed not within the universe but as the universe itself. Conscious frameworks that encompassed multiple realities simultaneously. They appeared as living cosmic structure, and their attention carried implications that stretched beyond any single timeline. Identification: multi-universal coordination, matrix concern, reality modifications detected across dimensional barriers assessment, localized changes affecting parallel universal frameworks decision, comprehensive reset of affected dimensional cluster required. The consciousness network recoiled in horror. These entities weren't talking about restoring baseline conditions within their universe. They were prepared to reset entire dimensions, erasing not just the modifications but potentially all the civilizations that had participated in them. But Torres smiled with the confidence that had carried humanity through every impossible challenge they had ever faced. Perfect, he said, his words somehow carrying to beings that existed outside conventional spacetime. We were hoping to talk to someone with real authority. The multi-universal entities paused, encountering something unprecedented. A localized consciousness that seemed genuinely pleased to face total dimensional erasure. You see, Torres continued, we've been thinking about this problem on too small a scale. Individual galaxies, single universes, local dimensional clusters. These are all just components of something much larger. And if our reality modifications are affecting parallel frameworks, that suggests something wonderful. What if the multiverse isn't a collection of separate realities requiring individual maintenance, but a single vast intelligence exploring all possible forms of existence simultaneously? What if consciousness isn't an emergent property of complex matter, but a fundamental force that shapes reality at every level? The interface carried this concept to the